Hey, Mike with No Problems Gaming here. In today's video, we're doing a review and how to play video on Wildtails, a Pirate Legacy, so let's get into it. Now, Wildtails, a Pirate Legacy, as it sounds, is a pirate legacy game, and so you'll take on the role of a band of pirates as they try and build their pirate empire. And you'll face off against other pirates, the British Empire, and the growing American colony, all while trying to build your pirate empire. And so with that said, let's jump into a bit on how you play the game so you have a better understanding on how the game works, and then I'll jump into my review after that. Alright, so playing the game is actually pretty simple. So this is the general setup of the game. And so to start off, you'll play with Anna and Samuel, and you'll have your stronghold out. Now, one thing to note is that there's different abilities that each character has and abilities that your stronghold has. I've played through the game so far, so I've got different stickers on the cards, but you'll unlock those as you play through the game. But to start off, you'll go to the campaign book, so you'll just scan the QR code in the rule book, and that will bring you to the campaign, and then that's going to give you different scenarios that you play through, as well as more of the story. Now, the setup I have right now is not one of the first scenarios, it's just random cards that I put out, but you'll get the idea of how the game works based on this setup. So again, you've got your hero cards out, you've got your objectives out as well, and so each campaign is going to consist of 2 objectives that you need to collect. And again, this will vary from campaign to campaign what 2 are out there, or once you've gone through the campaign, you can randomize this. You're also going to set out some type of threat, and so this is the first one that you start with, the Raiders. But again, this will be assigned on whatever campaign mission you're on. You've got your campaign tracker to track whatever scenario you're on, and then you can mark off whether you won or lost, and that will give you a score at the end of the game, telling you how you did. This also has your Pirates log, which tracks your turn sequence to keep you informed of that. It informs you of different curses you might encounter throughout the different rounds, and this tracks the rounds as well. So you're going to put this next to the threat that you're facing for the campaign scenario. And to start off, you're going to line them up here, depending on what round you're in. This will move across, showcasing what round you're on and the potential curses you might encounter. So again, the object of each scenario is going to be to collect the objectives, and to do that you're going to need to pay this price listed here. So in this case it would be 3 coins and 1 sword, and one player would need to do that entirely. They can't share these resources to try and collect that together. One person would need to acquire that, and then each person only can equip one of those as well. So if one player goes for one, the other needs to go for the other. So once you've collected those 2, you need to take out the threat for the scenario. So in order to defeat this villain, you'll need to do a skill check, in this case in Deception, which is that little mask with the 5 next to it. Now you also notice that this gets more powerful depending on how many cards the threat has captured, and we'll talk about that as well. So taking your turn is pretty simple. You're going to start off by checking for a crisis. And so what that means is you're going to look at the top card here in the location area, and then you'll look at this symbol here at the top. So this time it's the green slashes. So now that I've looked at the different curse that's activated, I can look at and see which round I'm on and what curses might be active. So if I was starting on round 1, for example, no curses are active, but if I was on round 2, the purple curse would be active. So in this case, let's say I'm on round 1, I wouldn't activate that curse, so it's not a big deal. But let's say I was on round 4, that green slash would be active in this case, and then it would be the hook that I would refer to on the chart. So in this case, I would have to discard the bottom card from the scene deck if that curse was active. And again, the scene deck is just the deck here, showing what location you're at. Alright, so now that you've checked for the crisis, the next step is you need to take one action. And so there's a variety of different options you can do with these actions. So you could attack the threat if you wanted to. You can take the scene card and gain the resource. You can acquire an objective, or you can level up the objective once it's equipped on your character, or you can just discard the active scene. So let's say I wanted to get the resources from this card. How that works is there's different levels of resources you could take. So there's the top level, which is always free, as it doesn't have a symbol with a cost associated with it. So in this case, I could just take this coin and get that for free and add it to my character whose turn it was. And so I'll just simply turn it to the coin side, and then I would place it on top of the character behind the card, indicating that they now have a coin. It would then shift to the next player's turn, and I would follow that same process. So again, I would check the curse meter. It's a green slash again. I'm still on round 1, so nothing happens. And then I would move on to the action phase. Now again, there's a couple more steps in the round as well that you can take, but they're optional. So once I've taken that resource, I have the option to store it in the stronghold. And so I can place it in the middle here in the stronghold. That's a free action that I can take, but the stronghold can only hold up to 3 resources. And then one option that characters can do is that they can smuggle, which is going to be taking a resource from the stronghold. So how smuggle works is it's showing that I need to discard one of any resource in order to take one of the items from the stronghold. And so if there was an item here in the stronghold that I wanted, I could discard the item that in this case Anna has equipped, put that in the discard pile here, and then take that item from the stronghold. I can't actually do that right now, but that is an option on your turn. Another thing you could do if you had the resources would be to acquire one of the objectives, and you'd place that underneath your character card. So let's say for example I had 3 coins and a sword. I could acquire that with Samuel if I had that, and then he would equip this as an additional ability. So now that you've got this item equipped, it'll show you the benefits that you get with each level. And so similar to the round tracker, you'll move this over as you level up with this objective. But how it works when you start off, you'll gain that first bonus because it has that check mark. So in this case, it would increase my fist by 1. So instead of 4, I would now have 5 as my base fist option. And so again, another option of an action you could take on your turn would then be to level this up once you've acquired it. So again, that's one option you can do, acquiring those objectives. Another option you can do is a skill check. So when you look at the card here, it shows you the cost of getting the better versions of items associated with the card. So I could spend 1 coin, for example, to gain the resources of 2 barrels and a sword, or I could spend 1 barrel and get 2 swords and a coin. But I also have this bottom option, which is a skill check. So if I go to the skill check option, it's showing that I need a deception of 8. So if I choose to do that, what I'm going to do is I'll set this card over to the discard pile. We'll look at my character's deception, in this case it's 4, and then I'll reveal the next card in the location pile. And so first thing you need to do is make sure that the symbols here don't match. If they do match, it's an automatic fail. However, in this case it didn't match because it's a lightning bolt and versus the green slashes. So then what I would do is I would take this number 3 and add it to my player's deception, in this case a 4, which would give me 7. Now if that 7 number was equal to or greater than this deception number here, which is 8, I would acquire this card and get it for those resources here of 2 gems and a cannon. However, I failed, so I just keep it here in the discard pile and it would move to the next player's turn. So attacking is another option you can do on your turn, and it works just like the skill check. So if I look at the threats level here, their deception is 5. I look at Anna's, her deception's 4. So I would need to get greater than or equal to 5 to successfully attack the raiders. So again, I would take the top card here, place it in the discard, make sure that they don't match. In this case they don't, it's an orange and a yellow. And then I would add this number here to Anna's deception in this case, because that's what the weakness is of the threat. And in this case I got the 2 plus the 4, which gives me 6. And in this case, the raider's deception was 5, so I would be successful because I had a greater than or equal to the number listed here. Now, one thing that happens at the end of each round is when the pile fully runs out of your locations, you'll shuffle these up and take one of these, and the threat will acquire this card, powering them up further. And so what happens is you'll put this behind the card, they'll now have captured this location, and so you'll look at the threat card here with more details, and it says +1 per card captured. So in this case, I would now need 6 deception in my attacks to defeat this threat. Another thing to note is that if you do attack the threat and you are successful, they will discard all of the captured cards that they have, and these go into the discard pile. And so again, the object of the scenario is to acquire both objects on your characters and then defeat the threat. So you need to have both of these equipped on your characters and then successfully attack the threat in order to win the scenario. Now another thing to note is that if the threat ever has 5 locations at one time under its control, you would also lose. So you need to complete the main objective of capturing the 2 objectives and defeating the threat before that happens if you hope to win the game. But once you've won, you'll move on to the next scenario, which will give you a new set of objectives and challenges and a different threat to face off against. And slowly over time, you'll improve your characters, unlocking new stickers to add to them, increasing their powers and abilities to help you succeed through the game. Now there's definitely some more detailed rules in the rulebook, so be sure to check for those, but that's just a general idea on how the game works, so let's jump into my review. Well, again, now that you have a better idea on how the game works, how do I actually feel about it? Well, I think this is a pretty cool legacy game. It takes a little bit to understand the rules and what you need to do on your turn, but once you get into the overall flow of the game, your turns are actually very quick, and it doesn't take that long to play around. You're probably looking around 15 to 20 minutes per scenario that you're going through. Some of them are definitely a little bit more challenging than others, and if you do happen to lose, you can retry the scenario, and I think having that initial insight on how the scenario works, it'll give you a little bit better chance to win that second time. I think it does take a good deal of strategy as well through each round, as you're going to need to map out what objective you're trying to go for as your characters, which one you want to grab, who has better stats to take on the threat in the scenario, and so you're going to need to work cooperatively with the other player if you hope to succeed. You can certainly play the game solo as well, but it works great as a multiplayer game. That's how I played it, and so we each took charge of one character and took on the different scenarios. It's not super long, but it is a legacy game, so the game will evolve as you go through and play. Depending on if you succeeded or failed, your empire will evolve, but then you can also give your characters different abilities based on your play style. And so I like that aspect, that it gives you that choice to evolve your characters as you go. The storyline is pretty detailed as well, with each scenario mapped out everything that's going on and what threat you're encountering and what your objectives might be. You're also faced with some different choices throughout the legacy campaign, which I thought was cool, and that can evolve the story as well. I will say though that it was kind of confusing to some extent when you're going through the rulebook, because it is such a small game. They've got things printed in 2 different rule books, and so often I would find myself jumping from one to the other, trying to figure out different rules, and that was a little bit frustrating. Another thing to note is that the whole campaign of the game is all online. So if you don't have access to internet or a smartphone or anything like that when you're playing, you won't be able to look up the different scenarios in the campaign and really progress at all. So I thought that was potentially a weakness of the game, and just something you should be aware of when you play, because if you don't have access to the internet, you aren't going to be able to access the campaigns for the game. Other than that, if you like the strategy of how it plays out and it looked like a fun game to you, I think it'd be worth picking up. There is some replay value to the game, because once you've gone through the entire campaign, you can still play it with random scenarios. So if you like the playstyle and the additional challenge, there's ways to make the game easier and harder. And so as a veteran player and gone through the whole campaign, it gives you that option to still have some replay in the game as well. But if you want to pick up a copy of this game, there'll be a link in the description below where you can do so. And if you like videos like this on video games, board games, and everything nerdy, check out one of our other videos here. And if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell notifications to get the latest updates of new videos we put out. But once again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you more soon.